Hello, I'm Stuart Kaplan, the CEO of Selfhelp Community Services, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to welcome you to a virtual Yom HaShoah tribute. It's a program that should have taken place at the Yeshivah of Flatbush, Joel Braverman High School. But due to COVID-19, we are unable to all be together, sitting side by side this evening. So instead, we will all be together virtually, and I ask you to sit back and watch the performance. The production of Witness Theater transforms lives, the lives of students and the lives of Holocaust survivors, who work together for a year, establishing bonds and learning about each other. This is the 8th year of these productions and the program, and we are grateful to UJA-Federation of New York for its ongoing support, as we are grateful for Sephardic Home for the Aged Foundation, and Jewish Federations of North America, JFNA, their Center for Advancing Holocaust Survivor Care. This year, 30 students and 16 Holocaust survivors have come together to produce Witness Theater. From Yeshivah of Flatbush and from the Abraham Joshua Heschel School and other schools throughout New York, and this year, one from New Jersey. What we will see is students and survivors bearing witness to stories of resilience and stories of survival. The two generations together inspire us all for the legacy of survival and the honor and memory of those who perished. More than ever, we ask that you reflect as you see the performance. It's important, more than ever, to truly reflect on the importance and meaning of life. Please be well, please stay safe, and thank you for the opportunity to bring you this performance virtually. I hope you enjoy.
Ordinary. It is a word that perfectly describes just about nothing these days. Ordinary items, ordinary events, ordinary places, ordinary interactions, these are what we yearn for as our world has changed indefinitely. In an ordinary year, on this day, Yom HaShoah, I would be standing in front of a live audience of hundreds of people, introducing a group of 16 Yeshivah of Flatbush students and 6 Holocaust survivors, recruited and served by Selfhelp Community Services, who have been working together since September. Ordinarily, we would be about to perform an original show inspired by the stories of survival that have been shared over the months, passed on from the eyewitnesses who experienced them to the generation that has pledged to carry them into the future. In an extraordinary display of emotion, empathy, and connection, these students would have portrayed the survivors' younger selves within the enacted scenes that would have been narrated by the survivors themselves. That is what the Witness Theater Yom HaShoah performance is in an ordinary year. But this year is anything but ordinary. Ironically, and much to our group's wonder and awe, our show's title this year was supposed to be Ordinary Blessings. It was to be all about how the most ordinary, mundane, everyday aspects of life are actually the greatest blessings. You see, after so many months of beautiful connections, emotional synergy, and life legacies delicately gifted from one generation to the next, nothing would ever be just ordinary. How different knowing Ted, Bella, Rochella, Yeshaya, Saul, and Maria has made our lives. While their only wish is that we never know such pain as they did, by bravely sharing their stories with us, they have turned our ordinary lives into lives full of blessings that even today, when things are less than ordinary, we can enjoy, look forward to, and appreciate. Ordinary is what we will never again take for granted, and it is a lesson that resonates today more than ever. Although we cannot perform our intended live theatrical production for you at this time, we have written pieces that offer glimpses into our sessions, our show, the stories, the photos, the personalities, and the relationships. Please know that whatever we share is but a fraction of the love and pride we feel for all 6 of our heroic friends, and we pray that someday soon we will be reunited in good health and happiness. Please honor them as they deserve, with your full attention and your open hearts. Thank you.
When Tibor Cooperstein, or Ted as he likes us to call him, enters the room, the first thing we notice is his beaming smile. He looks like he has won the lottery every single time he sees us. Honestly, we've come to learn that Ted feels this joyous about life in general. He is the definition of an optimist, and his positive attitude is infectious. We are always laughing when we are with him. Ted, dapper in his button-down shirt, slacks, and his famous sweater vests, has bundles of papers stuffed into all available pockets, reminding him of the countless meetings, jobs, and appointments he has on his ever-growing to-do list. With a noticeable pep in his step and an unforgettable laugh, Ted makes every moment one to treasure.
Dear Ted, I miss you. I'm living in a time when I can't tell if I'm sitting in the comfort or the confines of my own home, and I find myself thinking of you. With the absence of school, I have to motivate myself to pray on my own, to wake up and put on tefillin every single morning, to say Shema each night. And with most synagogues and communities shut down, it seems even harder to find a connection to God, even on the holiest day of the week. Yet a connection to God, it's what I yearn for right now. A God to call out to lean on when I feel crippled, to be the source of my faith in a time when we have boundless religious freedom, yet we're unable to use it. My mind often wanders to your father, whom you told us risked his life to form a secret minyan in the Jew house where your family was imprisoned when the Nazis invaded your community in Budapest. How he clung to his faith as his friends and family members were shuttled out of their neighborhoods like cattle, and as the unknown horizon in their future began to take the shape of a certain death. A minyan was your father's spiritual outlet, an escape from the madness around him. I think of how you must have felt back then. You, Ted, a young teenager watching your father's bravery as he led the minyan every morning and afternoon, feeling how his faith created hope inside of you that even the bleakest of situations would turn out okay. Until that fateful day when you and your family were moved into the ghetto. You told us how you cried that day when you were pulled out of the Jew house and marched with your family into a new kind of imprisonment. You cried because your father lost his minyan. You cried for your neighbor, Mrs. Citron, whose 3-year-old daughter was left behind as her entire family was sent to the ghetto. You cried because she was too young to survive on her own. You cried because she was too young to pray for herself. You cried because you couldn't even pray for yourselves anymore. With no home, no food, and no minyan, life worsened each day. You longed for your tefillin, for the Jewish pride that had been replaced by a revolting yellow star that branded you unworthy of life. A few weeks later, you were deported from the ghetto with your father, and together, praying under your breath for 2 sleepless days of non-stop walking, you survived the hellish death march to Mauthausen concentration camp. You recounted to us the utter horror as people all around you dropped to the ground from frostbite, hunger, and exhaustion, and were then shot by the Nazi officers, just for good measure. Shoulder to shoulder with your father the entire time, the struggle to keep moving began to feel impossible, as the only thing that held you up was your skeleton, which itself felt as if it would crumple. You thought this would be your end. Step after step, step after step, grasping for any kind of nourishment that would keep you going. And instinctively, you prayed, silently and slowly, word after word, clinging to life through your prayer. I wonder how you remembered that even if you couldn't turn around, you could turn to God. I wonder how you felt as you whispered the Shema to yourself. I wonder if, somehow, you could feel that little Siddur you were hiding under your clothes pushing you to go on. I wonder if your father felt your prayers shudder from your body through his, and if he felt proud, knowing that his faith and hope was not left behind in the Jew house, but rather that it was alive and it was strong in his own son. I wonder how you felt saying, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. As your first day in Madhousing came to a close, and you were finally allowed to sit and rest for the first time in days, you came upon the most bizarre scene unfolding in the barracks. A group of men had gathered in a circle and were discussing how to commemorate the first night of Hanukkah.
Hanukkah?
Someone exclaimed.
We sit here, a group of half-dead men, a group of breathing skeletons, and you speak of Hanukkah?
Of course.
Another answered.
I am alive, am I not? And I have an oil pill and a match, and I'll be damned if we don't use them as our menorah.
And that's what they did, and then they sang Ma'oz Tzur and danced around the flame. You couldn't believe what you were seeing, and then your gaze became consumed by that tiny flame, and it reminded you of all you had lost. The flames of your mother's Shabbos candles, the strong fire of the Havdalah candle, the Ner Tamid in your synagogue, the warmth of your home, and your childhood. But in that burning flame, you also saw another glimmer of hope, the hope of undying faith and the strength that comes with the connection to God that no one would ever be able to steal from you. And that faith is what you carried with you out of Madhousing, on the treacherous journey back to Budapest and into the glass house, where you and your family were ultimately saved by the efforts of righteous Gentiles Karl Lutz and Raoul Wallenberg. Your faith always made you feel that you had so much, even when you had hardly anything. In this moment in time, when I have less than I'd like to have, and can't do everything I'd like to do, I think of you, Ted. I think of what you stand for. I think of how lucky we are to be able to turn to those around us and to God at the same time. I think of how lucky I am to be able to pray out loud, even if my synagogue is temporarily closed, and how lucky I am to put on tefillin every morning, even if for the time being there is no minyan. I think of what it means to live on faith. I think of what it means to be a Jew, a proud Jew. I think of you, and I miss you. With great respect, Noam.
His faith isn't the only thing Ted shows us is limitless. He himself is limitless, as it seems that at the age of 92, there really is nothing our friend Ted can't do. Skiing throughout the winter, and water skiing during the summer, even Ted's grandchildren can't seem to keep up with him. Ted prays with the minyan every morning, and then goes to his warehouse, which we can vouch for is like its own museum of art and vintage artifacts collected over Ted's lifetime. But of all his amazing attributes and accomplishments, Ted is most proud that he is a Jew, and that he can freely and proudly pass his religious beliefs and practices down to 3 generations that are here today because of his bravery and his undying faith.
Each week, when Maria arrives at her sessions, we watch her gently remove her familiar corduroy hat and long warm coat. Before greeting anyone, she quietly takes out a mini comb from her pocket and brushes her soft white hair. Whether in her usual black and white turtleneck or in an occasional red sweater, Maria makes sure that she always looks her best. When she is ready, she turns to the group and smiles from ear to ear, a smile of pure excitement. Although when we first started meeting, Maria worried that her English was not strong enough. Now she is wholly comfortable, and the buzz of students swarming around her waiting to greet her makes her feel alive and proud. She hugs each one of us so tightly, grounding us in both mind and body. Then, with her strong and beloved Russian accent, she greets us, and we are ready for another great session.
Dear Maria, I could never have imagined attending school from my home. But as I sit here in my bedroom, watching my teacher speak to me through a computer screen, I find myself marveling at how everything has changed these past few weeks. How in an instant, the world just shut down. I'm often overcome with this realization that my education, something so ordinary and regular in my life, just a few weeks ago, was really a blessing. It was something that I hardly thought about. And now it is a daily challenge. It is something I yearn for. At times, it's something I grieve for. But instinctively, in those moments, my thoughts drift to your story of survival. As it was in our Witness Theater production, I played young Maria, sitting in her first grade class when her teacher asks,
"What is your nationality?"
"Russian," I respond. And then I'm laughed at by my teacher who says,
"You are Jewish, Maria. You cannot have two nationalities. You cannot be Russian and Jewish. Jews in Russia are Jewish. That's it."
In that moment, the spotlight falls on me. I'm mortified, confused, angry, but also determined to prove myself. Maria, you told us that from that very moment, you understood that because you were a Jew, you would have to fight for your right to exist as you were, and fight for your right to achieve success. And that's exactly what you did. By the time you were 10 years old, Germany had invaded Russia, and your town was under attack. You and your mother were on the run for a month before you reached the safety of your grandmother's home in a city called Solyansk. But soon after you arrived, you received a letter that your father, who had recently been called to war, had been killed in battle. Your mother and grandmother were not able to work, and you understood at such a young age that you needed to find a way to support your family and keep them alive. On stage as young Maria, I portrayed your struggle to come up with an idea of how to make money during the years of the war. As a 10-year-old with no more than a few years of formal education, you thought to yourself, "What can I do? I have to do something." Your clever brain sprung into action, and you had the idea to fill a pail of water from the local mosque and sell it in the marketplace. Maria, you were a tiny vendor with enormous determination. You observed the practices of the vendors and learned the ins and outs of market selling, overcoming challenge after challenge, never once thinking you would give up. With each idea came another, and as the seasons changed and weather grew colder, selling water was not as lucrative. So you collected scraps of material and made dolls. You picked up watermelons in a village far away and carried 5 at a time onto the train. No one even noticed you because you were so small. You walked miles upon miles each day to bring your wares to the market, and you practiced your techniques so that you could attract more customers. Although you didn't have time to dwell on the past, I can imagine that you must have missed learning algebra in a classroom, and your after-school piano lessons, and having recess with your friends. During rehearsal one day, when I carried my pail of water in that scene, you recalled out loud that when times were tough, you would have to sell your own clothes in the market. And a week later, when I sat alone on the stage in the scene where I counted my day's wages, you stopped me and told me that it took you almost 2 weeks to make enough money to buy just 1 loaf of bread. And you worked like that for 3 years. Because of you, your family survived. In thinking back to your first grade teacher who dared to embarrass you like she did, you should be so proud, Maria. You proved her so wrong. You found a way to carve out your own education. You created your own future and determined the great potential to which you would rise. It has been a life-changing experience to play the role of your young self. For our entire group, you have been an inspiration and have taught us the value of an education, both formal and self-taught. For you, to learn is to be alive, and you embody the notion that education is something that no one can ever take away from you. You have shown us how lucky we are to have the education that we have. And although the world at this moment feels confusing and scary, you've taught us to hold on tight to our education, in whatever form. And no matter how challenging it feels, you have taught us that an education is never just ordinary. It is and will always be a blessing. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Elizabeth.
Maria made sure to reclaim the education that had been stripped away from her during the war. Despite a number of rejections because of her Jewishness, she eventually received her PhD in chemical science and became the chief of the Department of Physical and Organic Chemistry at the Polytechnic University in Russia. In 1997, Maria and her husband Naum emigrated to America to join their daughter in New York. And soon after, Maria enrolled in Kingsborough College in order to learn the ins and outs of American education. Today, Maria has 2 beautiful grandchildren and is still educating herself in all kinds of different ways. Before each session, Maria consults her dictionary and makes sure she knows how to say each word she will need to use in the telling of her story. Seeing Maria walk into school each week reminds us how lucky we are to be blessed with the education we have today.
When it comes to Wednesdays with our dear Yeshivah, there are certain things we always count on. Her bright orange hair will light up the room, her blue eyeshadow will sparkle against her porcelain white skin, and her dark maroon lipstick will end up on everyone's cheeks by the end of our session. No matter how she is feeling, she will embrace each of us when she arrives and again before she leaves. She will shower us with advice and comfort us with her gentle voice. She will always stay calm, but she will never hide her true emotions. She will not hold back her tears when she is sad, and she will not pretend she has forgotten any part of her painful past. She is the epitome of real, and being around her makes you need to be your truest self.
Dear Yeshivah, as we live through this confusing and dangerous time, I marvel at how accepting you have been of all this uncertainty. When I call you on the phone to see how you are holding up, it is you who comforts me with words of courage and hope. Although we are both uneasy with the loss of routine and predictability, as well as our regular weekly witness theater meetings, you seem much more equipped to handle it all. And I am certain that this is because of your own, much deeper, much more dangerous experiences that began at the outset of World War II when you were only 4 years old. You were completely innocent, unaware of what was happening in the world outside your window, and unsuspecting of the dangers that were about to fall upon your family. Your worries ran deeper than the potential of contracting a virus. Multiple diseases raged all around you, and seeking care was not an option. You worried if you would be healthy enough to flee for safety, and you worried how you would live on one piece of bread that had to feed you, your mother, and your sister for days on end. You worried if you would ever get to see your father again, as he was drafted to the Russian army right before you fled. I sit at home, clinging to my family, as we watch the news unfold and wait together for the events of the coming weeks. My parents keep my spirits up, and my siblings keep me entertained, but you, Heschel, you didn't have any of what I am so lucky to have. You arrived in Uzbekistan with your mother, grandmother, and sister Sabina, and you were all sick with typhus. And one day, as you sat with your grandmother, she laid her head on your lap and died as you stroked her white hair. Days later, your mother passed away in a hospital, and you and Sabina were left alone, 2 little girls with no parents. You were taken in by a kind Uzbeki woman who envisioned a future with you and Sabina as her own children. But as hard as she tried to make you feel at home, you cried every day. When I play your part in our show, I portray a scene that repeated itself over and over as you mourn for your mother. In that scene, I am jolted from my sleep with thoughts of my mother, and I weep as I speak. Am I lost? I don't recognize this place. All I know is that I don't feel safe. Sabina and I are here all alone. I need mommy, daddy, my old home. There's been too much running, too much death, too many secrets about where mommy went. I wake up each morning to this unfamiliar scent in a stranger's old bedroom, hoping that daddy will come find us soon. Hoping that he's not up there with mommy and grandma. This lady who took us, she's very kind. But in my mind, She's not like my mother. So each morning, when I wake up, all I can think is, am I lost? You pined for your beautiful mother's gentle touch and her soft, comforting words. Without her, you were no longer certain that things would be okay. Rochella, you confided in us during our sessions that you felt guilty for eating the bread your mother had given you during the journey. You wondered if you had not taken it and insisted she eat it instead, perhaps she would have lived. And that guilt lived inside you long into the future, along with the haunting images of your grandmother and the loneliness of those months when you and Sabina were orphaned. You have been very honest with us about the pain of the past that coexists alongside all the joy you have in your current life. Towards the end of the war, you received word from the Red Cross that your papa was alive and searching for your family. A determined 6-year-old, desperate for love, you went out to the street corner and planted yourself there day after day, waiting for your father. One day, a tall, thin man in uniform approached your corner. Papa? Can it be you? Is it you? And it was, as handsome and joyful as ever. And when he bent down to embrace you, you thought you would never let go. The Uzbeki woman had envisioned a life with you and Sabina and didn't want to let you go. She told your father that he was young enough to remarry and start a new family. He didn't need you and Sabina like she did. But your father, in his even voice, spoke firmly to the woman.
These girls are my family. I will never leave them ever again. Ever.
And with that, you were a family again, ready to face the uncertain future together. Family was the key to your safety, the key to your ability to survive and rebuild. As my parents hold me tight, dry my tears, and reassure me that we will get through this, I focus not on their words, but on their presence and the feel of their arms around me. And I picture your beautiful face and your limitless courage, and I know there is nothing ordinary about having a family. Family is, and will always be, the greatest blessing on earth. Forever grateful, Serena.
Rochella's past has absolutely shaped her into the person she is today, but it does not define her. After the war, she worked hard to rebuild her life. She fell in love with Gregory, who played the saxophone, and emigrated to America in 1979, where she became a teacher in the New York City public schools. She taught for 30 years and was fondly known to her students as Miss G, the teacher who taught much more than the curriculum. Miss G was known for teaching life skills that you must apply it yourself in order to achieve your goals. Her students were like her family, and she treated them as her own. But today, she's most proud of her own family, her son and twin granddaughters, whom she said are like the pieces of herself out in the world, living the dream she dreamt so long ago.
Saul Roth enters the room slowly each week, carefully measuring each step with caution and dignity. It doesn't take long for us to gravitate towards his inviting baby blue eyes. The creases in his forehead carry so much wisdom and tell so many stories, even before Saul begins to speak. At 99 years old, Saul takes his time in our conversation, pausing often to reflect on where he is and who sits before him. He often remarks at how unusual and surprising it is that so many young students want to hear about his life. He asks us, "Are you sure you want me to tell you all of this?" And we assure him, over and over, that this is what we are here for, that this is how we are choosing to spend our time, that there is no place we would rather be.
Dear Saul, today I woke up and I was not sure what day it was. These days are confusing ones. Without a regular school schedule during the week and without the routine of shul and Shabbat on the weekends, it is hard to keep track of time. Tomorrow has become a frightening word, as we don't know what it will look like and we cannot prepare for what we cannot anticipate. As the creases of worry deepen in the faces of those around me, I can't help but picture your face, your eyes, and your story. You were just a few years older than I am now when the Nazis came to Czechoslovakia, and your parents' grocery business was closed down. You were a young adult, determined to find a way to support your parents and 5 siblings in any way you could. And you started selling sugar illegally. You were arrested, tried, and jailed for 2 years. It was a torturous existence. Solitary, exhausting, and demeaning. During those 2 years, your concept of time virtually disappeared as the weeks rolled into months and the changing weather was the only indication of time passing. You had no idea that as you labored through these years in the fields and factories, struggling to stay alive with hardly any sustenance, your 2 parents, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters had been deported to Auschwitz and murdered along with millions of other innocent Jews. Only your brother Shimon managed to survive. In our performance, I play your young self, and in one scene, I portray you digging up unexploded bombs in an open field with hundreds of other prisoners. This was dangerous work, as one wrong move could have set off a deadly explosion. When acting in the scene, I could always feel the tension as those around me dug slowly, painfully, knowing that any moment could have been their last. You were not released after serving your sentence in prison, but rather, because you were a Jew, you were marched to the Mauthausen concentration camp, where you spent 7 months. You told us that in Mauthausen, you would eat grass and worms, whatever you could find, that people were dying all around you, and that you were tasked with throwing bodies into the mass graves that were all over the camp. In our sessions, you often stop at that description. It was too painful to go deeper into your memories of that time, and we did not push you. In our minds, we imagined what it was like. You had been away from home for what felt like an eternity when you were finally liberated in 1945 from a different camp called Gunskirchen. You had survived death march, concentration camps, disease, lice, and starvation. And when you were finally able to reach your home, you discovered the awful reality that your family was gone. I can imagine that in that moment, time stood still for you, that you wondered if you would be able to keep going, if your painful past would hold you back from moving into the future. But you made a decision. Time would march forward, and so would you. Being at home because of the corona pandemic makes each day feel like an eternity. And then again, when I think of you, I realize how precious each minute is wherever I am, and that I should not wish any of it away. Killing time is an expression I loathe now. I don't think I would ever use it again, because you have taught me the value of time, the beauty of being able to recognize day and night, weekday and weekend, to experience seasons, to celebrate holidays and milestones. These last few months, we have looked to you for wisdom, and you have told us that at 99, you have much to give us, that being alive for that many years is unusual, and that you intend to cherish every moment you have. Thank you for being my constant reminder of how important that is. Now, as we find ourselves stuck indoors with so much time on our hands, I cannot think of a more valuable piece of wisdom. With deep respect and admiration, Joey.
Determined to rebuild, Saul married and had 2 sons. He and Fagi were married for 76 years when she passed away in 2012. Having just celebrated his 99th birthday in March, Saul thrives on his routine, which includes a daily trip to the senior center near his home. Each Wednesday, when he comes to our school, he has something new to share with us, whether about his grandchildren, his restaurant business, his real estate dealings, or his love of good food. Although this year his eyesight began to decline, Saul never failed to remark on how much he enjoyed seeing all of us each week. We have visited his home many times and pray for the day when Saul can return to Witness Theater and to his beloved senior center. Until then, we intend to honor Saul by cherishing each moment we have, even in these difficult circumstances.
first time we met Bella, it felt as if we were meeting a long-lost friend. We fell into comfortable conversation immediately, as if we had known each other forever. Bella brings a familiar rhythm with her into the room, and coupled with her bubbly personality, she has made our group feel like an instant family. Bella greets us each week with a "Hello, my darlings," and a hug for each of us. From casual gossip to baking secrets, Bella always has something to share, and our connection has grown stronger with each life lesson and story that she has told us. We speak often over the phone with Bella these days, and she remains as positive and loving as ever. We wish that you all could have met her in person like we did this year.
Dear Bella, the situation we are in right now is far from ideal. It feels dire and even apocalyptic at times. But every day that I wake up and exist in this restricted world, the thought of your story helps me keep things in perspective, because my world is now my home, and that home is safe and stable. I hadn't thought about it before because it always seemed like an ordinary part of my life. But this year, you taught me that a safe and stable home is really a blessing. Your home before the war was on the Danister River, and you spent hours on the banks of the river, playing with the paper boats your mother would craft for you. I can imagine the sounds of the gentle waves splashing on the shore, the laughter of the children around you, and the smells of your mother's cooking that wafted from your window. It must have felt so safe. When the war began, you were just 4 years old. Your father was a soldier in the Russian army, and your mother had to care for both you and your baby sister all alone. You have vivid memories of your mother dousing you both in kerosene each night just to ward off the diseases that raged around you. And when the Nazis reached your town of Mogilев-Podolsky, your mother grabbed you and your sister from your home and fled in search of safety. Holding your hand and carrying your sister, your mother ran with you from one shelter to the next.
Into the wheat fields, Bella!
She cries, and we run to hide among the tall wheat shafts.
Into the truck, Bella!
She cries, and we hide under bags in the back of a truck.
Into the river, Bella!
She cries, and we hide neck deep in my precious Danister River. Can we go home now, Mama? I ask, frozen in the dark water for half the night.
No, Bella.
She answers. I ask so many times if we can go home, and she always answers.
No, Bella.
We have spent many weeks together as you have coached me on how to play your younger self in our show. And I discovered that to properly do this, I had to allow myself to experience true fear. In one story you shared, your mother, fleeing from bombs and gunshots, pushed you into a deep and dark ditch and then jumped in after you with your sister in her arms. You described to us the painful thorns and cold mud on the floor and the walls of the ditch, and how you sat there frozen, barefoot, and cowering for hours. When I acted in this scene, I could feel the desperation as I tried to grab a hold of the loose dirt and climb out. The actress who plays your mother in our show tried to give me a boost, but quickly realized how difficult that was with a baby doll in her arms. And this was just a reenactment. We all sat in silence after that moment in rehearsal, speechless at the thought that this had been a moment in your real life. These days, because we are cooped up at home, sheltering in place from the corona pandemic, I try to take short skateboarding outings with my sister just to feel free for a few minutes. The other day, as I kicked off a piece of uneven concrete, I stumbled and crashed face first into the pavement. Fighting back tears, I looked up to find my sister extending her hand, ready to help me back on my skateboard. I thought of how many times your mother had extended her hand to you to help you back on your feet, and how back then you relied on her to keep you alive. We skate past our shul, which has been temporarily closed due to the pandemic, and it reminds me of the day your whole community was trapped in your shul, Nazis surrounding you and threatening to burn down the shul with you inside of it. I can imagine your fear and your mother's desperate attempt to assure you would be okay. As we turn the corner and head back home, my thoughts are consumed with what you had to endure. Constantly fleeing from villages into the fields, the Pechora concentration camp, and eventually the Mogilov ghetto, where you lived, starving and sick, for the last 2 years of the war. I am angry that this was done to you. I step off my skateboard and stand there, paralyzed with emotions. And then my phone rings. It's my mom. Should I come home, Mom?
Yes, Stella.
She replies. I step back on my board, my mother's words in stark contrast to your mother's. And as my home comes into view, I know that despite the uncertain future and challenges that my family is facing right now, I will appreciate the safety of my home in a way that I never did before. Your experiences have changed me forever. Love you always, Stella.
Bella was 11 years old when she met her father for the first time, as he had been in the army since she was a baby. But even after the war was over, Bella's family did not have a home for many years. As Jews in communist Russia, they were always on the run. When she emigrated to America in 1972, she was able to make a permanent home. And after all those years, she could finally leave home knowing that she could always come back. With that freedom and safety, Bella was able to spread her wings. She traveled all around the world, visiting over 30 countries with her husband and son, her grandchildren, and her friends. Bella still travels all the time and has enjoyed captivating us with stories of her adventures abroad. We are delighted that after all she's been through, Bella feels absolutely blessed.
You can tell Yeshivah Rosenberg is a holy person just by looking at him. In his suit and black hat, he channels his famous rabbinic ancestry and simultaneously exudes status and humility. He drops precious life lessons into all of our conversations, and we hang on his every word. Yeshivah never dawdles. He walks with purpose and seems to always have somewhere he needs to be. He has told us many times that we are a stellar group of students, and we take this comment very seriously, as Yeshivah is the type of man who can look right into your soul.
Dear Yeshivah, as my world has shrunk to the confines of my home, and my schooling now takes place within the four walls of my bedroom, I realize the importance of maintaining a healthy perspective. I am lucky to have learned that lesson way before this pandemic violated our lives, way back in September, when I met you. In the last 6 months, getting to know you and hearing your story has taught me the importance of mindfulness and the beauty of every breath we take. It is because of you that I make an effort to cherish each moment, no matter the circumstance. These days, when I go for my daily solitary walk, I take deep, revitalizing breaths of fresh air, and it reminds me that my life, which seems to be restrained at the moment, is a true blessing. It reminds me of the life you had when you were my age, a life that literally almost rendered you breathless. Your family, like most Hungarian Jews, never thought the Nazis would reach your country, but in 1944, they invaded with bloodthirsty strength and barbaric intent. Suddenly, all you had known until that point was taken away from you, your home, your possessions, and your pride. After months of severely deprived existence, living with your family in the Debrecen ghetto, your entire community was loaded onto cattle wagons to be shipped to Auschwitz. You didn't know it at the time, but mostly everyone was sent immediately to the gas chambers upon arrival. When it came time for your transport, you clung to your family amid the panic and confusion. Your parents, your beacons of hope, reminded you to breathe. As you boarded the packed wagon and the door slammed shut, you were enveloped in darkness and dread. No one knew where you were headed or how long it would take. Only a tiny window at the top of one wall offered any glimpse of your surroundings. The wagon was stifling, and after a few hours, the smell was unbearable. In the rancid air, you longed to take a deep breath, and those around you began to feel the same way.
I can't breathe.
Someone shouted.
I can't breathe either.
Another echoed, and suddenly, a desperate chorus.
I can't breathe.
breathe.
I can't breathe.
I can't breathe.
I need to get to that window.
One woman in the back cried as she clambered towards the tiny window.
If we are going to survive, we all need to turn by that window,
responded a strong, more rational voice. And that is just what happened. In an astounding effort to keep everyone alive, the entire group in the wagon rotated together, giving everyone an ample chance to breathe next to the window. Miraculously, by way of some political negotiations that you never could figure out, your train was rerouted away from Auschwitz, and after 11 days in the wagon, you were finally let out in Vienna, where your family was transferred to a labor camp and eventually shipped to Theresienstadt. Your story continues on with many chapters and many near-death moments, but one in particular stood out to me as I readied to take on the role of your younger self for our performance. It was the chapter that happened just before liberation, when hardly anyone was alive anymore, and you were tasked with the job of collecting dead bodies onto a pushcart. Even today, so many decades later, you can still hear the last breaths of the helpless bodies that still lived, as others were piled on top of them. If you could have, you would have breathed your own life into each one of them. My room suddenly feels freezing. I notice a large window that has been left open, and as I move to close it, I can smell the challah that my mother is baking downstairs for tomorrow's Shabbat dinner. I walk slowly down my carpeted stairs and out my cherry wood door into a world full of nature, beauty, and fresh air. Though I know I will never truly understand what you went through, I plan to honor you by making sure to live my life in a mindful way, with appreciation for every breath. This deep awareness and perspective that you inspired has taught me that each breath is a true blessing. With profound gratitude, Ricky.
Yeshia's entire immediate family managed to survive the war, and they rebuilt according to their traditions, pious and scholarly. Yeshivah immigrated to America and has been living in the same house in Borough Park for almost 60 years, where he and his late wife Stella built their ever-growing family. Yeshivah never passes a day without attending a Torah class, and he uses the stationary bike in his house to stay healthy and keep his heart strong. His pride and joy is his family, and although they are scattered across the country, his grandchildren and great-grandchildren send him letters all the time. He makes sure to respond to each one of them, as they are his reason for living. They are on his mind each morning when he says Modeh Ani, "Thank you, God, for the breath you give me at the start of each day."
Well, I'm really very happy that I met such people like the group. Well, it was really very surprising to me because I never been prior in my life among youth, and a youth who are feeling so free.
I really enjoy the program because the students, all the 16 of them, each one of them, I find them very, very fine, intelligent, nice children. It's really a pleasure to work with them together.
Oh, they are great. I'm always thrilled and I miss them so much now. You wouldn't believe. It was like a light in a tunnel. You know, it's revived my youth. We are not young people, but I was surprised that this youth is so interested in our past.
Just remember what happened, what we, the old generation, left behind.
They should do maximum, whatever they can do to fight anti-Semitism in every respect.
Don't let anybody to say Holocaust never existed. I'm so proud of them. I feel so great seeing them, hugging them. And they listen to you. They listen to what you're saying. And they're really listening. They don't pretend. They're listening.
על כל כישלונותיי מודה אני, על אכזבותיי, פחדיי ומכשוליי הם כולם לטובתי. אין אחר בליבי, רק לך מודה אני. אצעק לך אדיר שמך, אליך אקרא לך חיי, לך ליבי ותודתי, אליך אקרא, אליך אקרא.